Chapter 21. Family Standing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 21. Family Standing. Translator. Leg Editor. Leg. News of today's unexpected incidents kept going around, alarming everyone in town. On this night, no one stayed in their homes. Everyone was out and about as they discussed the events. Actually, a boiler explosion at the factory was not exactly a serious matter. After all, the factory's boiler had blown up on more than one occasion due to years of poor maintenance. It was different this time, however. In the past, the wolf pack wouldn't have dared to attack a factory under the control of humans. Almost every factory had over 1,000 workers working in them, and it would get especially rowdy on the streets outside of town after the workday ended. Some of the workers would return to town to stay for the night while others would simply sleep overnight at the factory's dorms. The factories operated around the clock with 3 shifts of workers. The wolf pack was bold enough to venture into a small human settlement positioned right next to the stronghold. There was something very bizarre about this indeed. As the soldiers accompanying the band said, Stronghold 113 was situated in a larger circular group of other strongholds, and being on the inside of this circular group, it made their stronghold safer compared to the other places. At the beginning, the stronghold was still sending troops to garrison the factory. But when everyone realized that there were no wild animal attacks on the factories, they withdrew the troops and only left behind some guns for the factory managers to use in case of emergency. That night, the stronghold city gate was suddenly opened. A loud rumbling could be heard as the stronghold's gate opened up. Then several hundred soldiers carrying loaded guns marched out. These were the private troops of Stronghold 113. Or to more aptly put it, they were the private army controlled by the Qin Consortium, the group behind Stronghold 113. The schoolteacher, Zhang Jinglin, once unwittingly mentioned that the consortium was the actual controller of the stronghold these days. They had power over the lives of humans and possessed weapons that could be used to fight off the dangers of the outside world. With money and weapons, they were firmly in control of the entire stronghold. This was the first time Ren Xiaosu and Yan Luyuan had ever seen so many soldiers come out of the stronghold. Yan Luyuan was hiding in the shack and secretly watching the private army as they marched out of town. He muttered, "Bro, are those guns they're carrying on their backs?" Those black guns looked brutal and menacing. However, Ren Xiaosu was not surprised that he could recognize all of those weapons. Moreover, he had a feeling that, as long as he could get his hands on those firearms, he could use them to great effect immediately. The private army was not marching in an orderly fashion. There was an off-road vehicle leading the way, but the formation of the soldiers following it was a mess and could even be called chaotic. Someone from the private army complained, "Isn't it just some people dying at the factory? Why can't we head there tomorrow morning? Why do we have to go there and kill the wolves tonight?" "Shut up," the higher-ups ordered this mission. Someone glared at him. "What's there to be afraid of? It's not like those jackoffs in office can hear us anyway. They're probably still sleeping with women right now," that man grumbled. He then lit himself a thinly rolled cigarette. Ren Xiaosu once again caught a whiff of that unusual smell of cigarettes. He frowned as he started increasingly distrust the stronghold's private troops. At this moment, the smoking soldier from the private army turned around and saw Ren Xiaosu and Yan Luyuan looking at his automatic rifle. He scolded, "What are the two of you brats looking at? Do you know what this is? Quit staring. You wouldn't know how to use it even if I gave it to you." Ren Xiaosu pulled the curtain door down, although he did not agree with the latter half of what the soldier said. For some reason, he deduced that the soldier might not be good at marksmanship. His right shoulder pocket that was supposed to bear the recoil of the rifle did not show any signs of long-term training with firearms. In reality, what Ren Xiaosu didn't know was that firearms these days were also quite precious resources in the stronghold. Usually, the private army's officers would not let the soldiers waste their ammunition. If they had that kind of budget, they would rather go drinking or look for women to fool around with. Alcohol was prohibited outside the stronghold, but it was not the case on the inside. Yen Luyuan wondered, "Bro, why do I feel that you seem to know about their guns?" Ren Xiaosu gave him a look and said, "Don't ask so much." Yen Luyuan complained, "Do I still have any standing in this family?" Ren Xiaosu was thinking about something else as he replied nonchalantly, "Don't think too much about it. Your role in the family is just to stay alive." Bdnvl. Yen Luyuan was speechless when the sound of the private armies marching got further away. Ren Xiaosu shot to his feet and told Yen Luyuan, "Go to Big Sister Xiaoyu's shack tonight and stay there for a while. Come back only after I return." "Bro, where are you going?" Yen Luyuan asked in a stunned manner. By the time he finished asking, Ren Xiaosu had already quietly lifted the curtain door and gone out. A lot of people had gathered on the streets, so no one took any notice of Ren Xiaosu's whereabouts. Usually, no one would dare to come outside at night. But today, everyone had left their houses and come outside as though they were celebrating the new year. Ren Xiaosu navigated his way through the darkness. After leaving the proximity of the town, he began to bolt it forward. The moonlight was not very bright on this night, but as Ren Xiaosu had been going out of town almost every day for the past few years, he could essentially walk out here with his eyes closed. The stronghold's private army took the main road while Ren Xiaosu chose to go by a parallel path to avoid bumping into them. He came out here not for anything else but to see if there was an opportunity. As for what kind of opportunity it was, he was not sure yet. Guns. It was the guns that enticed Ren Xiaosu to come out here. Ren Xiaosu had acquired advanced firearms proficiency, so he knew very well how important firearms were in today's era. The private troops who were accompanying the band once said that they were carrying firearms with them and that any wolves would flee if they heard their gunshots. Ren Xiaosu, who had encountered the wolf pack before, knew exactly how terrifying they were. But such terrifying creatures were afraid of gunshots. Ren Xiaosu did not know what would happen to these private troops if they came face to face with the wolves. He was not thinking of getting their guns because his target was actually the factory. The people in town all knew that the factory managers were assigned firearms. According to the people who returned after fleeing the factory, it was already over for those who remained behind. Ren Xiaosu had been wondering about it since the afternoon. Didn't they say that wolves were afraid of the sound of gunshots? Then shouldn't the managers be able to scare them away by just firing a few shots? Perhaps they did not expect that the wolves would come, so it could have been too late for them to draw the guns. Or maybe the wolves carried out a sneak attack on the shooters. There could also be some other reasons, but the guns were probably still there at the factory. Ren Xiaosu ran as fast as he could towards the factory. He was more familiar with this place than the private army was. And besides, the private army was marching there while he was running. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out in the darkness. Then a prolonged series of deafening gunshots rattled through the night. There was even the screaming of humans. Ren Xiaosu suddenly turned around and looked in the direction of the sound. Clearly, the private army had encountered the wolves, and many of them were still getting attacked after firing their guns. Didn't they say the wolves were afraid of gunshots? Didn't they say it was an animal's instinct to avoid danger? Today, Ren Xiaosu gained a new awareness of something. Although beasts had evolved to become stronger, they had never been able to overcome their animal instincts. Rabbits still ate grass, and wolves were still afraid of gunshots. Unless everything had changed. Chapter 22. Guns. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 22. Guns. Translator. Leg editor. Leg. There was an intense battle in the wilderness as the private army had not expected to encounter wolves. The wolves were extremely fierce and cunning, and it seemed like they had been waiting in ambush. At first, the troops thought that they could scare away the wolves by just firing their guns, but it turned out they were wrong. The wolves did not panic this time when they heard the gunshots. By the time the wolves appeared in front of them, the private troops were shocked to discover that these wolves were even bigger than they had imagined. They were the size of bison. Wait a minute. After these wolves attacked the factory, they waited in the only possible path that the private army would have to pass through. Why did it seem like they had been targeting these private troops from the very beginning? However, the private troops were trained soldiers. Before the casualties started piling up, they fell in and began to defend. Comparing the firearms of humans with the sharp teeth and claws of an animal, firearms would still come out on top in the end. The private army had dealt with the wolves on more than one occasion. In recent years, they had slowly started pulling back on their plans to encircle and keep the wolves suppressed after being instructed to do so by the people in charge. Of course, this also gave the wolves some respite. For some reason, as Ren Xiaosu listened to the gunshots, he found the cracks to be so pleasant that his adrenaline started pumping. The gunshots excited him. He didn't go and take a closer peek at the battle. All he knew was that if the wolves and the private army were fighting now, it would be safe for him to go to the factory. Ren Xiaosu ran like a cheetah through the wilderness. For the first time, he could get a complete sense of his newly obtained strength and dexterity. His muscle fibers tensed up and relaxed over and over again. This sort of feeling could only be described as invigorating. When Ren Xiaosu neared the factory, he finally slowed down. He hid in the darkness and approached it quietly. Ren Xiaosu was surprised to see many of the refugees' dead bodies lying around. It seemed like they had wanted to escape back to town but were caught by the wolves one after another. Only a minority of them were lucky enough to escape at the expense of their companions. Ren Xiaosu painstakingly examined their wounds. They looked like they had been bitten in the neck by the wolves and died immediately. However, the wolves did not feed on their corpses and seemingly left in a hurry. Ren Xiaosu thought for a while. He did not enter through the main entrance, instead climbing his way up a pipe on the outside of the factory building. Each time he passed by a window, he would scrupulously check if there were still any survivors inside. When Ren Xiaosu got to the top floor of the building, his heart sank. It didn't look like any survivors remained in the factory. The wolves had already swept through the entire factory, sparing no one. Where are the guns hidden? Ren Xiaosu wondered. The factory managers would definitely not place them where it would be easily accessible to others. Ren Xiaosu broke the glass window on the top floor and jumped into the building. He looked around and saw that the hallway was full of bloodstains and corpses. The large factory felt like a purgatory. All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu realized something was off. All of the corpses looked like they had been running in the same direction when they were alive, as though something was guiding them towards it. What would attract people to run towards the same place at such a crucial time? Ren Xiaosu came to a conclusion. That place would either be the location of the weapons storage or a hiding place. He followed this path all the way until he ended up in the basement. Was this the emergency shelter? The more he walked forward, the more corpses there were. Ren Xiaosu could imagine what the scene looked like when everyone was trying to escape in panic from the wolves. They wanted to escape to a safe place, but they were not fast enough to outrun the wolves. Ren Xiaosu arrived at an iron door. Indeed, everyone was escaping towards this place because they wanted to get in. No matter how much the wolves had evolved, they were still only flesh and blood. It would still be rather difficult to break through an iron door several inches thick. Ren Xiaosu wondered if anyone was still behind the iron door. He hesitated for quite a while before he raised his fist and knocked on the blast door 3 times. Someone behind the iron door shouted happily, "Is that the private army? You've finally come to rescue me. I'll open the door right away." The rhythm of the knocking was obvious and could not have been made by a wild animal. As such, the person on the inside mistook Ren Xiaosu as a soldier from the private army that had been sent to rescue him. With a loud grinding sound, the iron door burst open and revealed a middle-aged man on the inside. He had a leg wound, and his pants were stained red with blood. Even as he opened the door, he was standing on just one leg. However, the moment the door opened, both parties took action. Ren Xiaosu bent low and prepared to rush him. When the middle-aged man saw that the person in front of him was not a soldier, his first reaction was to raise his pistol. The atmosphere grew tense. Ren Xiaosu stopped in front of the middle-aged man because the black muzzle of the pistol was pointed right at his forehead. Hee, the middle-aged man laughed. So it's a little burglar who wants to take advantage of the situation, eh? I recognize you, you're Ren Xiaosu from town. Ren Xiaosu also recognized him. The middle-aged man was the factory manager, Wang Dongyang. I recognize you too, Ren Xiaosu said as he straightened up as though nothing had happened. Why are you the only person in there? No, you were the first person who fled here, and you closed the door immediately while keeping everyone else outside. Ren Xiaosu felt a sudden chill pass through him. No wonder there were bloody handprints all over the outside of the iron door. So it turned out that it was because of the refugees' crazy thumping on it. When the iron door was closed from the inside, it was impossible to open it via normal means from the outside. Wang Dongyang laughed and said, "You don't need to bother yourself with such matters. If you carry me back to town now, I'll spare your life. And what if I refuse to carry you back?" Ren Xiaosu started laughing as well. "Then I will just kill you with one shot. After that, I'll lock the door again and continue to wait for the army to come and rescue me. I'm a resident of the stronghold, so they will definitely come and save me," Wang Dongyang said. "You must be afraid that I'll tell everyone how you sold out everyone here and left them for dead, right?" Ren Xiaosu continued to laugh and say. Wang Dongyang sneered at him. As the pistol gave him tremendous courage, he had no fear at all. "How do you know that?" Ren Xiaosu pondered for a moment. "The father knows his son the best." Wang Dongyang was confused. Then factory manager grew infuriated. "Do you think I won't kill you?" "I also know another thing," Ren Xiaosu said calmly. "What?" Wang Dongyang had a bad feeling about it. "I know you didn't disengage the safety on the gun, and it's too late for you to do so now." Wang Dongyang's pupils suddenly contracted. He had originally thought that it was the private army who came, so he didn't really think too much of it. But when he saw that it was Ren Xiaosu, and Ren Xiaosu had rushed in so decisively, he did not have enough time to disengage the safety. He had thought that he could easily frighten Ren Xiaosu because he felt that a refugee like him would not have seen a gun before or know how it worked. He thought that he would only feel fear with one pointed at him. However, Ren Xiaosu knew more about guns than the majority of people in Stronghold 113. Chapter 23. Boss Luo, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 23. Boss Luo Translator. Leg Editor. Leg the factory manager, Wang Dongyang, felt a sense of despair growing as it grasped at his heart like a creeper vine. He didn't think he would get seen through by an unexpected development. He couldn't understand why this youth facing him knew about guns. A second later, he suddenly took a step back as he wanted to use this opportunity to disengage the safety. But Ren Xiaosu would never give him the chance to do so. He charged at Wang Dongyang like a cannonball, crushing Wang Dongyang's ribs. Even his gun was sent flying out of his hand. Wang Dongyang had nothing to rely on now. He laid on the ground, coughing up blood, and said, "Let me go. I'll tell you where I kept all my belongings." "Tell me first and I'll let you go," Ren Xiaosu said calmly. "Do you think I'm stupid?" Wang Dongyang actually knew this was just a futile attempt to be let off. How could this teen possibly let him go? If Ren Xiaosu allowed him to leave, could he still survive in the vicinity of Stronghold 113? And when Wang Dongyang first learned of the existence of Ren Xiaosu, he was even referred to as Ruthless Ren Xiaosu. Your lungs have already been pierced by your broken ribs, so it's too late for you even if you go back to town now. Ren Xiaosu laughed. Although he was eager to get Wang Dongyang's belongings, it was clear that he would not tell him where he kept them. Ren Xiaosu wasted no time here. He did not know when the battle between the private army and the wolves would end. But if he dragged his feet around here any longer, it would not end well for him no matter which side arrived at the factory. The sound of a sharp weapon cutting through leather tore the air. Ren Xiaosu used the bone knife to imitate a wolf's claws slashing across Wang Dongyang's chest, creating fake wounds. He waited until he was certain Wang Dongyang's vital signs had stopped before he picked up the pistol and headed out. Ren Xiaosu also took the 2 magazines Wang Dongyang carried on him. There were a total of 36 bullets. By the time Ren Xiaosu left the factory, no one remained alive. Ren Xiaosu turned around and gazed at the building where a bloodbath had taken place. Behind him was the darkness of night. This was the world he lived in. "Bro, are you alright?" Yan Luyuan said eagerly when he saw Ren Xiaosu lift the curtain door and walk in. He circled around Ren Xiaosu to check if there were any bloodstains on him before he felt at ease. "I'm fine." While tying the bone knife back around his calf, Ren Xiaosu asked, "Did anything happen in town while I was away? Is the private army back yet?" "Some of them have returned. They brought some wounded soldiers back with them, as well as the dead bodies of their fellow soldiers and carcasses of the wolves. I heard that the rest of the troops continued on to the factory," Yan Luyuan said. Ren Xiaosu didn't think that this was unusual. No matter how strong the wild wolves might be, it would be impossible for them to win when faced with a private army that was several times greater than them in number. Moreover, the soldiers were even carrying weapons with them. How many wolf carcasses did they bring back? Ren Xiaosu asked. "Over 30 of them." Yan Luyuan said, "Bro, those wild wolves are enormous." When Yan Luyuan had asked Ren Xiaosu what size the wolves were, Ren Xiaosu just described them as very big. As for what very big truly meant, Yan Luyuan found out today. Ren Xiaosu frowned. He was glad that he hadn't stayed at the factory for too long. Otherwise, he would likely have run into the private army that arrived at the factory shortly after. It seemed that the wolves withdrew once they felt that their ambush had failed. So the battle with them did not delay the private army for too long. It was no wonder he didn't hear any gunshots in the wilderness when he came back via an alternate route. However, the wolves were getting stronger and smarter. If they let them go this time, the people in town might have to face an even stronger attack from them the next time. Suddenly, a commotion brewed outside. Ren Xiaosu lifted the curtain door and watched what was happening. It turned out that a group of 10 soldiers from the private army had driven back in advance in an off-road vehicle. An officer in the vehicle said, "Anyone who volunteers any information on those who went out of town tonight will be handsomely rewarded." Ren Xiaosu was taken aback because he knew they were clearly looking for him. They must have already gone to the factory and looked around the place. Ren Xiaosu had thought that it would be impossible for a normal person to discover the phoniness of Wang Dongyang's wounds. However, there was still a crucial problem that could not be reconciled: Wang Dongyang's pistol had gone missing. If someone worked backwards upon discovering this problem, it would be easy to get clues on what had happened. This was something that Ren Xiaosu could not prevent. "Bro," Yan Luyuan got worried as he looked at Ren Xiaosu. "I'll be fine." Ren Xiaosu pushed Yan Liuyuan's head back into the shack. Ren Xiaosu carefully recalled that he did not take the main road when he left town. If he remembered it accurately, no one should have any idea that he had gone out other than Yan Luyuan. The soldiers were standing guard at the entrance of the town. Soon after, all of the other soldiers returned as well. The people in town watched. Right afterwards, the private troops began going door to door and rummaged through every household storage chests and cabinets. They were searching for that gun. Suddenly, a familiar voice shouted, "I know who went out in the middle of the night." Ren Xiaosu turned around and saw that it was the clinic's doctor, Yu Tong. He was looking at Ren Xiaosu with a smile on his face and standing very far away from him, as he was afraid that Ren Xiaosu would try to kill him. The private army's officer strolled over and asked, "Who?" "It's him, Ren Xiaosu. I saw him go out of town with my very own eyes," Yu Tong said with an arrogant smile. Ren Xiaosu did not deny this. He admitted, "At that time, the town's common privy was occupied by Hizong, so I had to go outside to relieve myself." "Who is Hizong? Is he telling the truth?" the officer shouted. Hizong, who was standing nearby, had a dumbfounded look on his face as he did not know how he suddenly got implicated in this. He said meekly, "Indeed, I had diarrhea tonight. Many people can testify." The officer turned around and looked at Ren Xiaosu as he sneered, "Search." After he said that, Wang Fugue darted out before his soldiers could rush into the shack. "Wait a minute, he's someone who has been singled out by one of the aristocrats in the stronghold to be taken care of. You can't treat him like this." The officer was stunned. "What do you mean?" "In the afternoon, Boss Luo Lan from the stronghold specially ordered for him to be taken care of. Even Ren Xiaosu himself doesn't know about this yet. But as for why he is doing this, you'll have to ask Boss Luo yourself. It's not convenient for us to reveal it to you," Wang Fugue explained quickly. "Boss Luo." The officer was a little surprised. Everyone could tell from his reaction that he clearly knew the boss who went by the name of Luo Lan. In fact, it even seemed like he was a big shot in the stronghold. The officer thought for a moment and said, "Even if he is Boss Luo's guy, we must still search him. This is a very serious matter. I'll personally apologize and explain it to Boss Luo tonight." After saying that, the soldiers rushed into Ren Xiaosu's shack and rummaged through their belongings. Another 2 soldiers carried out a body search on Ren Xiaosu. 2 minutes later, the soldiers were all shaking their heads when the search did not turn up anything. The officer looked at Ren Xiaosu. "Bring me to the place where you took a dump." Ren Xiaosu frowned as he made his way out of town. He didn't expect the officer to be so rigorous with the checks in order not to miss any details. Yan Luyuan, who was behind him, was about to run over. However, Ren Xiaosu turned around and snapped, "Get back inside." Yan Liuyuan's eyes reddened. Ren Xiaosu led the officer and soldiers out of town. He pointed to a pool of feces and said, "There, it's still hot and fresh." The officer had a look at it and then ordered the soldiers to continue searching the other households. They did not bother with Ren Xiaosu anymore. Ren Xiaosu could finally heave a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he was well prepared. Before he left town, he observed the surroundings and thought of a reason before he came back. Not only did he bury the gun outside of town, he also laid the last of the situational evidence to cover his lie. By taking a dump right outside of town. He turned his gaze to Yu Tong, who had been following them. Yu Tong pissed his pants when he saw the daggers in Ren Xiaosu's eyes. Chapter 24. Ren Xiaosu, the drug dealer. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 24. Ren Xiaosu, the drug dealer. Translator. Leg editor. Leg at first, Ren Xiaosu was unsure whether the clinic's owner, Yu Tong, had really spotted him going out of town or if he was deliberately trying to frame him even though he did not see anything. Later, he recalled that he had not seen Yu Tong at that time. Ren Xiaosu knew he would have to be wary of Yu Tong after stealing his business in case Yu Tong tried to take revenge on him. After all, it was always necessary to be cautious of scheming people in times like this. As such, if Ren Xiaosu did not have any impression of such dangerous targets appearing in his memory, it would surely mean that the other party had not witnessed him leaving town. Therefore, it was more than likely that Yu Tong was deliberately lying to frame Ren Xiaosu. As for whether Yu Tong had considered the consequences of unsuccessfully framing him, Ren Xiaosu felt that he was not smart enough to have considered this scenario. In the past, Ren Xiaosu could tolerate Yutong's antics. As he had stolen some of his business away, Ren Xiaosu could not bear to thoroughly break his living. Thus, he exhorted Yutong to return to his medical books and study them well. In the end, not only did he not take his advice, he even plotted against him. Ren Xiaosu sneered as he looked at Yutong, who had turned tail and fled back to town. There was also a puddle on the ground where he had been standing. Next to him, Wang Fugue laughed and said, "Looks like my intervention was not needed after all. You were going to be alright anyway." Ren Xiaosu turned his head to Wang Fugue and thanked him earnestly. He would remember those who were willing to step forward and put in a good word for him in a situation like this. "Hey, no need to be so polite." Wang Fugue smiled brightly. "If not for Boss Luo's appreciation of you, I would have been too scared to step forward and speak up for you. Boss Luo specifically sent someone to bring word to the town administrators to look out for you." Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. "Who's Boss Luo? Does he know me?" Wang Fugue winked at him and whispered, "That medicine of yours. Boss Luo likes it a lot." Ren Xiaosu was speechless. Ren Xiaosu realized that the black medicine that Wang Fugue purchased from him had been sent into the stronghold. Boss Luo has given his word that as long as you hand over a fixed amount of the black medicine on time each month, he will ensure that you'll be free from trouble here outside the stronghold, Wang Fugue said with a smile. In reality, he had an ulterior motive for doing this. After all, he could ensure his own safety by acting as the intermediary for Ren Xiaosu's black medicine that Boss Luo wanted. Suddenly, Ren Xiaosu got an idea. Is Boss Luo very influential and powerful in the stronghold? You still don't know, do you? Wang Fugue declared proudly, he is the Qin Consortium's representative in Stronghold 113. If he's the representative of the Qin Consortium, why isn't his surname Qin? Ren Xiaosu felt that something was off here. Don't go shooting your mouth off after I tell you. Wang Fugue lowered his voice to a whisper. It's said that he's the half-brother of some big shot within the Qin Consortium, an illegitimate son of the family. Then can you ask Boss Luo to help get us into the stronghold? Ren Xiaosu thought that if an influential person like Boss Luo, who had great authority in the stronghold helped them, it wouldn't be too difficult to get them in, right? We're all contaminated, so how can we be allowed inside the stronghold? Wang Fugue said with a sad frown. Besides, if you get into the stronghold, who's going to pick the wild medicinal herbs for Boss Luo? Ren Xiaosu had a realization. The latter half of the sentence was actually the truth as to why he wasn't going to be allowed into the stronghold, right? For Boss Luo, there was no reason at all to bring Ren Xiaosu and the others in. He could leave them outside the stronghold and have Ren Xiaosu continue supplying him with the black medicine. That same night, Yan Luyuan suddenly ran a high fever. Ren Xiaosu exchanged a bottle of black medicine and tried applying it on Yan Luyuan's forehead, but it did not make his fever go down. Ren Xiaosu sat beside the bed and looked at the feeble Yan Luyuan. He said with a sigh, "You didn't have to make a wish for this. Don't make any wishes without me asking you to do so in the future, understand? The fevers that you get as a result could end up killing you." Yan Luyuan could barely open his eyes as he said weakly, "But what am I to do if something happens to you?" Ren Xiaosu lowered his head and thought for a long time. "Don't be stubborn. I will definitely ensure that we'll lead a comfortable life together someday. Amicham." The next morning, when Ren Xiaosu went to town to fetch water, he was surprised to hear a piece of news. Yutong had packed all of his belongings and money and run away in the night. He would rather face the dangers lurking in the wilderness than face Ren Xiaosu. Someone said that Yutong had gone to Stronghold 114 because it was the closest to Stronghold 113 and was also in the opposite direction of where the wolves appeared. As long as he took the main road there, he should be fine. Ren Xiaosu did not know whether to laugh or cry. Yu Tong had actually run away in fear. However, something that surprised Ren Xiaosu even more happened. Chen Haidong, who was an administrator sent from the stronghold, came knocking on his door. He asked affably, "Ren Xiaosu, I heard that you know how to heal people and save their lives." Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. "I can only treat knife wounds and external injuries." That's fine, that's fine." Chen Haidong was smiling even more happily now. "That still makes you a doctor. Now that our town no longer has a doctor, do you think you'd be interested in becoming one?" Yan Luyuan, who was still lying down in the shack with a fever, opened his eyes in shock. This brother of his had only wanted to earn some gratitude tokens and money initially, so how did he suddenly become a real doctor? Furthermore, he was going to become the only doctor in town too. He didn't even have to make a wish for that. Was it because it was unnecessary to make that wish for Ren Xiaosu's incident last night that it somehow changed his luck? However, Ren Xiaosu understood that this was only happening because the administrator, Chen Haidong, was also trying to get into Boss Luo's good books. Authority made the people around you want to serve you meticulously. Ren Xiaosu was not dumb. He agreed immediately and said, "About that house at the clinic, can I?" "Yes, you can." Chen Haidong said with a friendly smile, "You totally can. You can move in today since no one is living there." Chen Haidong then walked off, his hands behind his back, while humming a little ditty. Right after, Old Wang came back with a wooden box tucked under his armpit. After Old Wang arrived, some of the people, who were rumored to be members of the richest group in town and lived in brick houses, also dropped by. Some of them operated small gambling dens, drapers' shops, and grain shops. Old Wang said, "Congratulations, Ren Xiaosu. You get to live in a brick house just like that." During the conversation, Old Wang handed a gift box to Ren Xiaosu. "I got a small present for you and Luyuan. Since both of you are still growing, eating this will help strengthen your bodies." Curious, Ren Xiaosu opened it and was surprised to see a white lump. "What is this?" "You don't know what this is, right?" "I've kept this bird's nest for many years," Wang Fugue explained. "It's really nourishing." Ren Xiaosu had only heard of this stuff. He had never seen it before. However, he had always had doubts about it. Mr. Zhang Jinglin said that bird's nest is made from a swiftlet saliva, but I don't think that the viscosity of saliva can be that thick, so it's probably made of phlegm. Wang Fugue was annoyed. "Don't make my gift sound so disgusting," he said unhappily. "Then what about blood bird's nest? What is that made of?" Ren Xiaosu gave it some thought. "Phlegm tainted by blood." Chapter 25. A banner. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 25. A banner translator. Leg editor. Leg, give it back to me if you don't want it. "You don't have to make it sound so disgusting," Wang Fugue said as he tried to snatch the bird's nest back. Ren Xiaosu happily covered up the bird's nest box and threw it into the shack. "Come on, it was just a joke. I didn't mean to make it sound disgusting." He looked at the people behind Old Wang. Frankly, if you were to address them as esquires, that would be an insult to the word esquire. These people were all holding some gifts in their hands. Actually, everyone here was no stranger to Ren Xiaosu. Their main intention in coming over this time was to exchange civilities with Ren Xiaosu. What this meant was that they had accepted him into their circle, and they were all going to be friends from now on. Ren Xiaosu did not stand on ceremony with them. Yan Luyuan was still lying in bed and recuperating at this moment, so if there were tonics for them, why not? Ren Xiaosu. Old Wang pulled him aside and said, "You should move into the clinic as soon as possible. There are 2 other houses attached behind the clinic, and it comes with a yard measuring over a dozen square meters. A lot of people are already eyeing the place." Okay. Ren Xiaosu nodded. He was still quite polite towards Wang Fugue. Furthermore, Boss Luo has gotten his people to send you some medical supplies from the stronghold. These are all worth quite a bit of money. I've already told them to send the supplies to the clinic. The most expensive ones are the anti-inflammatory pills and anesthetics. You had better keep an eye on them, Wang Fugui whispered. There are people who steal anesthetics as a substitute for their smoking addiction when they can't get their hands on cigarettes. I've suffered losses from such cases. Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. He didn't think that anesthetics had such an effect. However, it was still good to have someone give him things for free. Hoping for more, he asked, did he send anything else? There's a banner as well. In the morning, Ren Xiaosu and Xiaoyu threw their belongings together in a pack and headed to the clinic. Who would want to live in a shack when they could live in a brick house with bright windows and clean tables? He had already planned for Yan Luyuan and himself to live in one of the two rear houses, while Xiaoyu could live in the other. Xiaoyu had initially lived in a brick house. After that, she moved into a shack for the sake of these two younger brothers. Now that Xiaoyu could live in a brick house again, one of Ren Xiaosu's wishes could be considered fulfilled. But when Ren Xiaosu walked into the clinic carrying Yan Luyuan on his back, he was dumbfounded. He saw a banner hanging in the middle of the clinic's wall. It was emblazoned with the words, "Magic Hands Restore Spring," from Luo Lan. According to Wang Fugui, as long as the banner was hanging in the clinic, no one would dare to do anything to Ren Xiaosu. But of course, Ren Xiaosu would first have to not involve himself in anything that went against Luo Lan's interests. This would act as a talisman for them, even though it made Ren Xiaosu feel very uncomfortable. He did not know if Luo Lan had casually instructed his people to make the banner or if he was deliberately teasing him. It's probably the former, right? After all, in Luo Lan's eyes, Ren Xiaosu was only a refugee who sold medicine outside of the stronghold. Ren Xiaosu helped Yan Luyuan get settled in. Ren Xiaosu did not tell Xiaoyu about Yan Liuyuan's condition last night because he was afraid to disturb her sleep. She only found out about it this morning, so she was feeling terrible. Yan Luyuan was thoroughly enjoying Xiaoyu's meticulous care for him. Suddenly, he thought of how he always used to make fun of her, so he said weakly, "Big sister Xiaoyu, I'm sorry for behaving the way I did in the past." Xiaoyu looked at him. The two of you are imps, so there's no need to apologize to your sister. But if you weren't more mature than the other kids, you wouldn't have survived until now. That's mainly because my brother is amazing. Yan Luyuan laughed. I wonder how much hardship that kid has had to suffer through the years. Xiaoyu sighed. Countless hardships, replied Yan Luyuan calmly. Ren Xiaosu was currently browsing through and checking the medicine that was left behind in the clinic, as well as the new medical supplies sent over on the orders of Luo Lan. Perhaps someone had informed Boss Luo that he specialized in treating wounds, as he had sent a lot more anesthetics and anti-inflammatory pills over. Ren Xiaosu was overjoyed when he saw that there were fever relievers and antidotes inside the crate of medicine. He brought the anti-inflammatory pills, fever relievers, and antidotes to Yan Luyuan and made him take them. The main symptom of Yan Liuyuan's illness was the inflammation of the tonsils caused by excessive internal heat. It didn't matter if this medicine was suitable for the symptoms. It would cure the illness. There were also some medicinal herbs in the clinic. Some of the cabinets had the names of medicinal herbs written on them and the treatment suggestions for the different types of symptoms. Ren Xiaosu lamented how Yu Tong did not cherish his chances even though he had such a good father. That same night, Yan Liuyuan's fever finally subsided. Only then did Ren Xiaosu heave a sigh of relief. He said to Xiaoyu, "You can brew the tonics that those people brought over. You and Luyuan can eat them." "All right." Xiaoyu nodded and went to make dinner. Recently, the three of them were just like siblings and were at ease around each other. Sometimes, fate was a wonderful thing. These three who did not seem to fit together did just that. When Xiaoyu returned with the dishes, she shouted for Ren Xiaosu and Yan Luyuan to eat. Ren Xiaosu suddenly thought of something and said, Xiaoyu, since you'll be living next door from now on, you can use the place as your bridal chamber when you get married. Xiaoyu's expression changed right as she was about to pass a bowl of rice to Ren Xiaosu. You're getting sick of me so soon. Do I eat a lot? Or do I waste money? Ren Xiaosu was stunned. Big sister Xiaoyu, that's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? Xiaoyu took the bowl back and said spitefully, Ren Xiaosu, you're such a heartless person. You're eating the food that I cooked and you still wish to kick me out. Even if I fed it to a dog, I wouldn't let you eat it. Xiaoyu then shoved the bowl into Yan Liuyuan's hands and said, finish the rice. Yan Liuyuan was confused. After saying that, Xiaoyu was the first to break into laughter. Then Ren Xiaosu and Yan Liuyuan laughed along. Yan Liuyuan suddenly felt that Xiaoyu looked tender and gentle when she was laughing. It was just a pity that she was born in the wrong era. Xiaosu, what plans do you have for the future? Xiaoyu asked as she ate. I've no plans at the moment. I'm just gonna take it one step at a time, Ren Xiaosu said. He was still most concerned about the quest weapon that had yet to be unlocked. Ren Xiaosu's initial wish was to ensure that he and Yan Liuyuan could carry on living well. But when he realized that he had a superpower, he couldn't help thinking that there was more that he desired now. For now, the repeatable quest was not complete. He still had to successfully treat 10 patients. He didn't know what the new quest would reward him with. As for the mysterious vending machine, would there be any other products besides the black medicine? All these unknowns were awaiting discovery. Yan Liuyuan looked at Ren Xiaosu with much anticipation. Bro, what are we going to do tomorrow? Can I help you treat the patients? Ren Xiaosu chuckled. Why? Are you well again? Yes, Yan Liuyuan replied. Having finished dinner, he was in rather good spirits. I'm feeling fine already. MHM, Ren Xiaosu nodded. Go to school if you're fine then. Okay. Chapter 26. Save the Mother or the Baby. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 26. Save the Mother or the Baby. Translator. Leg Editor. Leg early in the morning, Ren Xiaosu opened the clinic's door and observed the surroundings. This was probably the first time in many years that he found the morning air in town refreshing. After the cataclysm, the sky was covered with a strange haze most of the time. The schoolteacher, Mr. Zhang Jinglin, said that a huge amount of dust particles were blasted into the sky during the cataclysm. It not only blocked sunlight for photosynthesis, but the climate also became extremely cold, and acid rains were a frequent phenomenon as well. The situation had gradually improved in recent decades, with the sun being visible for most of the year now. Ren Xiaosu's clinic was across from the grocery store. The moment he opened his door, he saw Wang Fugue coming out of his store with 2 freshly baked sweet potatoes in his hands. Xiaosu, come, have some sweet potatoes. Ren Xiaosu couldn't help but sigh. Before this, he found it difficult to even ask for a free needle to sew his clothes with from old Wang. Even free thread for sewing clothes was impossible to get, let alone a needle. But now this Scrooge took the initiative to offer him sweet potatoes. Ren Xiaosu looked at how cheerful Wang Fugue was. Since someone gave him a gift, he should probably give something back to reciprocate, right? He smacked his lips and said, I don't have much to give in return, but I've got plenty of anesthetics to go around. Why don't I give you a free shot of it? How can you offer to give me a shot of something like that? Wang Fugue's expression darkened. He asked, say, you haven't been out to gather any medicinal herbs for the past few days. Would you happen to still have any of that medicine left? Yes, I've got anti-inflammatory pills, anesthetics, and cough and mucus medicine, Ren Xiaosu said with a smile. I mean, do you still have that black medicine available? Wang Fugue was slightly embarrassed. Didn't you just buy some not long ago? Ren Xiaosu asked knowingly. That was for the big shots in the stronghold, so stop acting dumb. If I didn't send the medicine in, do you think you would have taken over this clinic so easily? Wang Fugue complained. To tell you the truth, I was only planning to give it to Chen Haidong at the beginning. I don't understand how it made its way into Boss Luo's hands in the end. Wang Fugue did not really understand how the black medicine made its way up the ranks. He wondered how many more dosages were left by the time it got delivered into Boss Luo's hands. Here. Ren Xiaosu took out 2 small porcelain vials. Yesterday, he bought a small vial of black medicine to treat Yen Liuyuan's fever. There were still 2 dosages left, so he separated them into different packaging a while ago. 1,200 yuan, and not a single yuan less. I'll be sending one of these vials into the stronghold. Wang Fugue stared. Don't you feel embarrassed about how much you're charging me? Take it or leave it. Ren Xiaosu prepared to put the black medicine back into his pocket. In the end, Wang Fugue did not hesitate. He decisively held Ren Xiaosu's arm and completed the transaction with cash. After that, Wang Fugue even thanked him. Gratitude received from Wang Fugue, +1. Ren Xiaosu felt that Wang Fugue was quite an interesting person. His 2 thank yous so far had earned Ren Xiaosu 2 gratitude tokens. However, Ren Xiaosu found it a little pitiful to give away the medicine just like that. Also, why were his gratitude tokens dwindling? He only had 4 tokens left. But he weighed the pros and cons. As he wanted Yen Luyuan and big sister Xiaoyu to have a better life in town, it was essential to foster ties with people in the stronghold. Besides, the black medicine was not exactly given away for nothing, so why not? Thinking this, Ren Xiaosu sighed. He would have to see if he could gain more gratitude from the people now that he had been appointed as the clinic's doctor. Ren Xiaosu's top priority was to go out to gather more medicinal herbs. As he was a cautious person, he had to pull out all the stops. It would be bad if he aroused the suspicion of others. Otherwise, when people talked about him in the future, they might just go, so's superpower is to make an iceberg appear out of thin air and drop it on a city, while so has a power that can cut through mountains. Meanwhile, when they talked about Ren Xiaosu, they would say, his superpower is to create that kind of medicine. That would be too damn embarrassing. After Ren Xiaosu reached the wilderness, he couldn't help but look for where he buried the pistol. He had to be sure that no one else found it before he could feel at ease. The handgun was now the greatest reliance he had. He couldn't let any of his plan go wrong. Even though he possessed a strength of 4.5 and dexterity of 4.1 now, humans still couldn't outrun or win against a gun. When Ren Xiaosu returned to the clinic carrying a bamboo basket on his back, he saw Xiaoyu looking uncomfortable trying to help a couple who had come to the clinic for a consultation. The moment she saw that Ren Xiaosu had returned, she turned her eyes to him, signaling for help. Xiaosu, attend to the patients quickly. Ren Xiaosu placed the bamboo basket on the ground and asked, what injuries do the 2 of you have? I'll have you know you've come to the right place. That's great. The man said, we aren't injured, but my wife, who's 4 months pregnant, suddenly got some pain in her stomach this morning. I was afraid that something might have happened, so we came to see if you could treat her. Ren Xiaosu froze. Although he was a doctor, he had no idea how to treat something like this. In these current times, there was no such thing as andrology and gynecology. The mindset of the refugees in town was to go to the clinic whenever they felt ill. This put Ren Xiaosu in a difficult position. He had said those boastful words and was now faced with the expectations of the couple, so surely he could not disgrace himself, right? Ren Xiaosu tried hard to remember the lessons that Mr. Zhang had taught in school and the books that he had read there to think of a way to deal with this problem he was facing. What would doctors commonly say to expectant mothers and their family members? Ren Xiaosu gave it some thought. Do you want to save the mother or the baby? The couple was confused. The man grew furious. You're a quack, right? My wife is only experiencing some stomach pain and you asking me whether I want to save the mother or the baby. The problem is, my wife is only 4 months pregnant. Where would I put the baby if I chose to save it? Ren Xiaosu thought it sounded quite logical. This time he said with a sigh, I'm really sorry to the two of you. I was in the wrong. To be honest, I don't know a thing about gynecology. If I continued fooling you, that would be unforgivable. The previous doctor also wouldn't know how to treat her since he really was a quack. It had to be said that Ren Xiaosu could easily kill someone without blinking his eyes if they deserved to die, but he couldn't do something against his conscience like lying to an expectant mother. Ren Xiaosu continued, my suggestion is that you go to school and borrow some books from Mr. Zhang to read and let your wife eat and drink well most days. Then it will depend on fate for whether she gives birth smoothly or not. I won't con any money from you too. On top of that, don't go around buying random medicine from other people. I know that you shouldn't take any medicine when you're pregnant. There's a high probability that it will lead to malformation of the child in the womb. If you don't believe me, you can check with Mr. Zhang or borrow some books from him on how to prevent a miscarriage. The couple looked at each other as they did not expect Ren Xiaosu to say something like that. The man thought for a while. I feel that you're a little better than the previous doctor. The last time I got sick, he was so afraid that I wouldn't buy his medicine. However, my health did not improve even after taking his medicine. I had to pull through and recover by myself. The pregnant woman stood up and said with a smile, thank you, doctor. Gratitude received from Qin Jejia, +1. Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. He did almost nothing this time, but he still gained a gratitude out of the blue. Chapter 27. Giving in to temptation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 27. Giving in to temptation. Translator. Leg editor. Ren Xiaosu felt a little puzzled. He was merely telling the truth, yet somehow, he still received the patient's gratitude. Both Yen Luyuan and he had the mindset that people would only be grateful if they were given something for free. Ren Xiaosu had attended one of Mr. Zhang Jinglin's class where he described how great human civility used to be. This made him wonder why the graciousness that took several thousand years to build up had collapsed so quickly. Today, this couple made Ren Xiaosu gain a vague understanding. However, he could not quite put a finger on what it was. On the same day, Ren Xiaosu had Xiaoyu take down the sign that was hung outside the clinic to sew on the additional word, wounds, before the word, clinic. He'd lied, cheated, and stolen many times, but he only did them selectively. Today, Ren Xiaosu made a decision. From now on, he would only treat illnesses that he could treat. If he couldn't, then so be it. In the end, none of the patients that came today suffered from any sort of wounds. Instead, all of them had aches and ailments that he did not know how to treat. To his surprise, when he told these patients that he honestly couldn't do anything for them, he still managed to raise the number of gratitude tokens to 10 at the end of the day, without even having to use any of the black medicine. Ren Xiaosu sat in the clinic in a state of confusion. What the fuck was going on? He didn't know everyone had accumulated grievances with the previous doctor, Yu Tong, over a long period of time. Through Ren Xiaosu's actions, those who had gone to seek treatment from him started publicizing him. I think ruthless Ren Xiaosu is a much better person than that previous bastard of a doctor, Yu Tong. If he doesn't know how to treat your illness, he will never try to make money off you by prescribing medicine on a whim. When some busybodies heard about this, they thought, wow, there's even something like that. Then they went to the clinic to check it out. While they had their fun, Ren Xiaosu was feeling hard done by. The number of patients that consulted him exceeded the number of gratitude tokens he earned by at least 10 times. Some of them complained of headaches while others thought that their faces had suddenly swelled up. The fact that someone even came to him to get their fortune told left Ren Xiaosu speechless. But once Ren Xiaosu made up his mind on something, he would make sure to do it. He advised the townspeople and sent them away like how he had explained things to the couple. Afterwards, the townspeople realized that Ren Xiaosu really did not charge at a whim for his medical services. Their initial impression of Ren Xiaosu was that he was a very ruthless person. This was because the young Ren Xiaosu had to take care of Yan Luyuan and wanted to gain a foothold in this town. As such, he had to compete bravely and ruthlessly against others to have even a slim chance of survival. Later, everyone's impression of him changed to drug dealer. But right now, everyone was beginning to think that if they ever received a wound, they would immediately go to the clinic to get treated by Ren Xiaosu. Such word of mouth had come from nowhere and puzzled Ren Xiaosu greatly. At noon, Xiaoyu went to town with her basket to buy some groceries. During this recent period, they could afford the better things in life as their savings reached 3,400 yuan. As such, they could also get better raw ingredients from the town's market. Xiaoyu would even buy some fine salt and pigskin occasionally. The texture of fine salt in the mouth was quite different from that of coarse salt, while oil from the pigskin was extracted to be used for frying. There were pig farms located outside of this town. Domesticated pigs had also evolved after the cataclysm, but as long as they were neutered while they were young, they would grow up to be very docile animals. Without a doubt, humans were the most adaptable species and were good at utilizing the environment around them. No other species came close. Usually, the good meat from these pigs was shipped into the stronghold for consumption. Only a tiny quantity of the remainder would remain in town for sale. In the past, Yan Luyuan dreamed of getting into the stronghold as one of his biggest wishes was to eat meat. Xiaoyu returned to the clinic with a basketful of vegetables. The moment she came in, she beamed and said, my Xiaosu, do you know that the townspeople are praising you to the high heavens? Ren Xiaosu was a little surprised. Really? Yeah. Xiaoyu smiled and started cutting up the vegetables. Our Xiaosu has become a doctor now, so your future wife will surely be the best possible candidate in town. When you get married and have children, I'll help you take care of them. Ren Xiaosu grew uncomfortable. I've never thought about that before. Xiaoyu got upset. How old do you think you are? It's time you started thinking about it. Oh, I also bought some peanuts today. I wonder where the townspeople dug them up from. I'll cook some for both of you in a bit. At this moment, Yan Luyuan came back from school. Nowadays, he could also eat lunch when he returned home at noon just like the other students. He used to bring 2 potatoes with him to school every morning and eat them for lunch. After coming through the door, he spotted some peanuts in the basket and immediately picked one up. But before he could shell it, Xiaoyu slapped it out of his hand. Don't you eat that. There's still dirt on it. Yan Luyuan angrily banged on the table. Why is a person as beautiful as you stopping me from having peanuts? Sister Xiaoyu broke into a smile again and said, all right, you can eat them. While shelling the peanuts, Yan Luyuan told Ren Xiaosu, bro, a lot of people gathered outside the school today. During our classes, Mr. Zhang wouldn't allow any of them in. But as soon as classes finished, all of them rushed in. I don't even know what happened. Do you want to go and have a look? Ah. Ren Xiaosu was stunned for a moment. Then an ominous feeling rose inside him. A familiar figure angrily made his way in. It was the schoolteacher, Mr. Zhang Jinglin. Ren Xiaosu's eyes lit up. Mr. Zhang, you're here. Would you like to join us for lunch? Lunch. My ass. Zhang Jinglin said angrily, if you can't treat the illness, then don't do it. Why did you have to direct everyone to go and look for me? Ren Xiaosu had said to the couple, if you don't believe me, you can check with Mr. Zhang or borrow some books from him on how to prevent a miscarriage. As Ren Xiaosu felt that this method was pretty useful, he gave the same advice to every patient who consulted him during the morning. Zhang Jinglin said resentfully, if they were just normal illnesses, I could have let it slide. But you even referred someone with athlete's foot to me. You don't know just how bad it smelled when that guy took off his shoes. Fortunately, I was able to escape in time. Ren Xiaosu was embarrassed. He smiled apologetically. That's only because I think you're knowledgeable and learned. Zhang Jinglin was on the verge of a breakdown. I'm just a teacher. If you can't treat the illness, do you think I can treat it? If you push any more patients onto me in the future, I will make sure to give Yan Luyuan endless homework to do. Yan Luyuan was still shelling peanuts and was confused. Why are you dragging me into your conflict? Ren Xiaosu grabbed some peanuts and stuffed them into Zhang Jinglin's hands. Don't worry, I won't do that anymore. I really won't, I promise. Zhang Jinglin thought for a while before returning to the school while shelling and munching on the peanuts. Chapter 28. Caught off guard. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 28. Caught off guard. Translator. Leg editor. Leg. As night fell, Ren Xiaosu felt that his life was starting to get better. At this moment, he was staring at the 10 gratitude tokens that he had accumulated inside the palace. He was thinking about how great it would be if he could unlock the weapon soon. Yan Luyuan was sleeping soundly next to him. During the afternoon class, the students wanted Ren Xiaosu to share more of his stories about the wolves due to the recent incident in town. For example, they wanted to know what they should do or how they could escape if they ever encountered a wolf pack. However, Ren Xiaosu did not want to talk about this and continued sharing his knowledge of wilderness survival with the students. He felt that if there came a day that these children encountered wolves in the wilderness, they were more likely to perish than anything. The physical differences between humans and today's beasts ensured such an outcome. That was not something that he could help with by teaching them. Rather than teaching them how to hunt and kill wild animals, it was better to teach them how to find food and water to preserve their lives if they did not encounter the wolves. Being killed by the wolves was a kind of helplessness. But if they starved to death, that would be too unworthy. Most unforgivable was not that the contents of the lecture were not to the expectations of the students, but that Ren Xiaosu held the class behind to give the lesson. This led the students becoming aggravated with him. They even went home and complained to their parents. But what the students did not know was that while they did not dare to provoke Ren Xiaosu, their parents were also afraid of doing so. All of a sudden, Ren Xiaosu heard an unusual noise coming from behind the yard's wall. The person who made that sound seemed to be extremely cautious about something. However, someone like Ren Xiaosu, who had often survived out in the wilderness, had to be alert to any sound or movement. He might die if he wasn't. He immediately blew out the kerosene lamp in the room and quietly made his way into the yard. Ren Xiaosu hid at the bottom of the wall and carefully listened to the movements on the other side. He heard someone leap onto the wall from outside. That person grabbed the top of the wall with their hands and then pulled themselves up with both hands before finally leaping over the wall and into the yard. While still in midair, the man looked down at the ground and happened to spot Ren Xiaosu, who was sizing him up with a curious look. The next second, he saw Ren Xiaosu fall into a squat and draw his arms back. It was as though he was gathering up all of his strength before letting it burst. He threw a punch that could split a mountain apart, aiming it straight at the crotch of the uninvited guest. The uninvited guest tried to dodge the attack. He was quite skillful and could easily counter the danger by putting his knees together and using them to strike Ren Xiaosu. But Ren Xiaosu was much quicker than he expected. Wait. Ah! The uninvited guest lost his balance and fell to the ground in pain. He clutched his privates and chuffed in agony. At this moment, footfalls thudded from outside. It seemed like more than one person had come. Ren Xiaosu looked calmly at the person who was lying on the ground. He could not tell the identity of the person from his attire. A second later, another 2 figures jumped in. Wait. Ah. Fuck. Another 2 people were left rolling on the ground. Ren Xiaosu frowned. If he had to give an assessment of their skills, it was probably just average. But if he were blunt, these people would not even last one round against him. Someone knocked on the front door. A familiar voice said, "Open up." Ren Xiaosu remembered this voice. It was the officer who had led the private army to search the entire town. Suddenly, he realized that these people were from the stronghold's private army. However, Ren Xiaosu could not understand why these people were so weak. In reality, they weren't weak. Although the stronghold's private troops often neglected their training, normal people couldn't deal with them so easily. These private troops had heard from someone that Ren Xiaosu was well known for being ruthless. But from their point of view, how strong could a refugee be? Xiaoyu and Yen Luyuan, who were sound asleep in the house, had been woken up. They put on their clothes and came out to see what the commotion was about. "What's the matter? Get back into the house." Ren Xiaosu then went to open the door for the officer. He wondered why the private army's troops would intrude on their property by climbing over the wall while dressed in civilian clothing. It was quite obvious that they were trying to catch him off guard and had come back to check on the most suspicious person in the missing gun case. Perhaps these private troops were eager to answer to the higher-ups but were also afraid of offending Boss Luo. It would be fine if they could find the evidence. Boss Luo was not the only person who called the shots in Stronghold 113. Besides, he might not necessarily think that highly of Ren Xiaosu. But if they could not find the gun, they might end up facing the wrath of Boss Luo. Logically speaking, after getting searched the first time, and with Boss Luo's influence in this matter, most people would not expect the private troops to return again and continue the search. What if he had brought the gun back with him when he went out to gather medicinal herbs the previous time? Then he would have placed himself in great danger. According to Wang Fugue, the factory manager that he had killed was also from quite an influential family within the stronghold. Ren Xiaosu frowned. They were trespassing on his property tonight. Furthermore, this was the second time they were searching him. Based on the circumstances, he should be in the right. However, who could he possibly reason with here, outside of the stronghold? Reasoning was determined by the size of one's fist, but his fist was not big enough yet. Ren Xiaosu had beaten up 3 of the soldiers in a single breath, so he felt that they would not let the matter slide so easily. After this incident, Ren Xiaosu knew that he would have to remind himself to be even more cautious and not underestimate anyone at all. In fact, the officer who was standing at the door with about a dozen men was also enraged. He could not accept the fact that his soldiers could not even handle a simple refugee like Ren Xiaosu and that he had to come in to save them. If this got out, his reputation would take a big hit. So there had to be a conclusion to this matter today. Right when he was about to tell his men to kick the door open, the clinic's door opened by itself. The soldiers standing outside the door were confused. They saw Ren Xiaosu wrapped in a large banner that had the words, "Magic Hands Restore Spring," from Luo Lan, on it. The officer fell silent for a while, then laughed in spite of himself. What was this? Using the banner to protect himself. Ren Xiaosu was on full alert as he scrutinized the officer's expression. He was mainly worried that the officer would get impulsive and take revenge even though he saw the banner that was wrapped around his body. However, the officer skirted around him and went straight in. "Search." Ren Xiaosu followed them and said, "Didn't you already search me?" The officer's expression darkened when he saw his soldiers still rolling around in the yard. Buncha good. 4. Nothings. He turned to Ren Xiaosu. "My name is Wang Songyang. If you want to get Boss Luo to stand up for you, you can tell him my name." "How can I?" Ren Xiaosu grinned sarcastically and said, "It's not like you've done anything wrong." Wang Songyang sized up Ren Xiaosu. After several minutes of searching by his men, they came out and reported, "We couldn't find anything." Wang Songyang immediately led his soldiers out. Before he left, he turned around and smiled ambiguously at Ren Xiaosu. If only you were born in the stronghold. That would have been great. You make a much better soldier than this bunch of wastes of space. Wait a minute. Ren Xiaosu was stunned. The factory manager was named Wang Dongyang. Could it be that this Wang Songyang was related to him in some way? No wonder this man did not give up on investigating him. It was because he was trying to track down the murderer. Chapter 29. The Sorrows of Our Era. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 29. The Sorrows of Our Era. Translator. Leg Editor. Leg. When Ren Xiaosu found out that the officer's name was Wang Songyang, he was shocked. He was very worried that this fellow would start relentlessly pursuing him. At dawn, Ren Xiaosu opened the clinic's door and saw Wang Fugue sweeping the grocery store with a broom. When Wang Fugue saw him, he put the broom aside and walked over. He lowered his voice and asked, "What happened last night?" "It was nothing." Ren Xiaosu shook his head. "The stronghold's private army still suspects me and conducted another search." Wang Fugue spat in anger. He said indignantly, "They always treat us refugees as thieves. Even after I told them that you had the backing of Boss Luo, they still dared to come and search a second time." All right, you can stop putting on an act." Ren Xiaosu looked at Wang Fugue in a speechless manner. "Why are you feeling so disgruntled for me?" Wang Fugue started to laugh. "You can rest assured that you'll be all right. I've sent a new batch of black medicine into the stronghold." Right at this moment, a man sprinted over with a bleeding arm. When the man was still a distance away from the clinic, he shouted, "Doctor! Please save me." The man was probably frightened because his arm was bleeding heavily. However, Ren Xiaosu knew at a glance that this man's wound was nothing serious. In town, nothing serious meant not having to die. It had to be said that the refugees had quite a broad outlook on life. Other than matters concerning life and death, nothing was considered too serious. Ren Xiaosu glanced at him. "Come in. You're not that badly hurt, so you won't die. How did you get injured?" "I was on my way to work at the factory, but I realized that I had forgotten to bring something. I ended up going back home to get it, but I discovered that there was someone in my shack stealing my stuff. I tried to catch him, but he slashed me with his knife," the man explained. "Doctor, will I really be all right? I've already lost so much blood." "You'll be fine," Ren Xiaosu said calmly. When the man heard that he would not die, he calmed down a little. Ren Xiaosu took another look at his wound and wondered if he should use the anesthetics that he recently received and had yet to use. Ren Xiaosu looked at the man and said, "We have anesthetics here. After the injection, you won't feel any pain while we're treating the wound." "Is that so?" The man was taken aback. "Do I have to pay for it?" "Of course." Ren Xiaosu snapped. "Would I give you such an expensive drug if I didn't need you to pay? Look at the size of your wound. It's at least 10 centimeters long. You're gonna die from the pain if I sew it up with a needle on a wound this long." Ren Xiaosu was actually telling the truth. As the wound was too large, he would have to be very careful when applying the black medicine on it. Otherwise, a single dosage would not even be enough. So he was truly worried that this man would not be able to tolerate the pain. At this moment, Xiaoyu came out holding a metallic tray with a syringe and a small bottle of anesthetics on it. The syringe was from the equipment that was left behind in the clinic. Due to the state of medical treatment available, they did not have any disposable syringes and needles. Therefore, they had to properly disinfect the equipment each time they used them. Based on best practices, this was definitely the wrong way of doing it. But what could Ren Xiaosu do about that? The best he could do was to disinfect the equipment properly, like sterilizing the needle over a flame for a little longer. This time, Xiaoyu waited for the needle to cool down before she used it to suture the wound. But just as she was about to use it, she had a dilemma. "Xiaosu, should I administer the anesthetic inside or outside the wound? They had never used anesthetics before, so Xiaoyu was wondering whether the anesthetic would be more effective if it was administered into the wound. Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. He had also not thought about it before. I'm not sure. The man beside them listened to their conversation and nearly pissed his pants. So you've never used anesthetics before? Do you even know how to treat wounds in the first place? The man had heard before that Ren Xiaosu could treat wounds. Coupled with Ren Xiaosu's good reputation in town, he immediately thought of coming here to get himself looked at. However, it didn't seem like that was the case. So where should I administer it, Xiaosu? Xiaoyu asked. Ren Xiaosu saw the patient's expression and gave it some thought. Why don't you administer it on his leg instead? Prevent him from running away afterwards. The patient was surprised. Quest complete. Awarded 1.0 strength. Quest. Successfully treat 20 patients. Even though Ren Xiaosu had completed the repeatable quest for the third time by successfully treating 10 patients throughout the day, his gratitude tokens fell from 10 to 8. Many of the patients did not give him any gratitude even after they had been successfully treated. However, Ren Xiaosu felt that his life was extraordinarily enriching. During the morning, he would attend to patients at the clinic. During the afternoon, he would take over his duties as the substitute teacher at school. At night, he would chat with Xiaoyu and Yan Luyuan out in the yard. He had tilled the soil in the yard and planned to plant some vegetables. One of his greatest wishes from before was to have a yard he could plant scallions, garlic seedlings, and various vegetables. Right now, Ren Xiaosu felt that his strength had almost doubled to that of a normal adult male, and his muscle had become denser. Ren Xiaosu asked his mind palace, "What are my current strength and dexterity?" The voice from the palace answered, "You have a strength of 5.5 and a dexterity of 4.1. Ren Xiaosu did not say anything. It seemed that his attributes were relatively balanced for now, and it was unlikely that he would suddenly look like a beefcake. Yan Luyuan suddenly asked, "Bro, why didn't you treat all the patients? Every one of them represents money to be made." Ren Xiaosu glanced at him. "I don't know how to treat them." The previous doctor didn't know how to treat them either, yet he still treated everyone who came to the clinic. Yan Luyuan thought about it and questioned him again. "We can't learn from him." Ren Xiaosu explained, "Take a look at his current plight. Did anyone offer to help him when he was in trouble? As people, we need to have inviolable principles. But if something happens to us, others may not help either," Yan Luyuan muttered with his head lowered. "Since they won't help us, why should we be so kind to them? These days, there are a lot of people who can't wait to see us fall." Ren Xiaosu looked at Yan Luyuan with a serious expression. He knew that Yan Luyuan was still young and that his values were still in their formative stage. The environment Yan Luyuan lived in had ensured he would suffer plenty of malice from the outside world. Ren Xiaosu had to admit that Yan Luyuan was right. In this era, everyone was selfish. Selfishness was such a natural thing that even the intention to harm others was seen as normal. But Ren Xiaosu had to make Yan Luyuan understand that they should not be like the others just because it was the norm. "Do vi ko, Luyuan, remember this." Ren Xiaosu said seriously, "Don't let the sorrows of our era become your sorrow as well." Yan Luyuan fell deep into thought while Xiaoyu looked at the two brothers with glistening eyes. She suddenly felt that as long as Ren Xiaosu was with Yan Luyuan, he would never take a wrong path in his life. A hubbub burst from outside. Someone exclaimed, "The band is back. Didn't they go to Stronghold 112? Why did they come back? Right, and that guy who went as their guide isn't among them anymore." Ren Xiaosu looked up and suddenly thought of the cap-wearing girl with perfect firearms proficiency. Chapter 30. Ren Xiaosu, that guy who's sick in the head. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 30. Ren Xiaosu, that guy who's sick in the head. Translator. Leg editor. Leg the band was back. Ren Xiaosu was a little puzzled by this. It would have taken them at least 2 months to go back and forth from Stronghold 112 and here. Calculating the time, it was probably only a week since the band left. So, they couldn't have reached Stronghold 112 at all. In fact, they wouldn't even have reached the foot of the Jing Mountains. In theory, there shouldn't be any danger along the way other than the wolves. But the appearance of the wolves here in town was staggered with the band's timing. If the band had actually encountered the wolf pack, they probably wouldn't have made it back alive. After all, the wolves were no longer afraid of gunshots. When he remembered the wolves, Ren Xiaosu got a little worried. When the subject of the wolves was brought up during a conversation with Wang Fugue yesterday, Wang Fugue revealed that he learned some news from one of the town administrators, Chen Haidong. He said that the wolves had suffered heavy casualties after ambushing the private troops, and the entire wolf pack had retreated in the direction of Stronghold 111, to hide in Mount Yang. They presumed that the wolves would not dare to come back here again. However, Ren Xiaosu did not think so. The wolves had also gone away once before, but didn't they still come back? And they were even more ferocious than ever. What had caused these wolves to evolve again? Ren Xiaosu didn't know. Ren Xiaosu was watching the commotion through the clinic's window. He saw the refugees in town coming out of their shacks as they watched silently. They were very curious about the band initially, but when they realized that something might have happened to them, they became even more curious. When the band departed from here, they had with them 4 off-road vehicles. However, only one of those was left, and it was even moving slowly. The stronghold celebrity, Luo Xinyu, and 3 private soldiers sat in it while others followed behind on foot. Their outfits were all torn to pieces. Yan Luyuan wondered, when they left, they were all prim and proper. Now that they're back, why have they become like us? Although their current lives had improved, there was still a lack of water. The refugees were always treated equally when it came to the allocation of any water. The stronghold was very strict about this administration. So if there was any excess water at home, Ren Xiaosu and Yan Luyuan would automatically let Xiaoyu use it to wash up. Meanwhile, they would brush their teeth with a little bit of the water. What it really meant to brush teeth was to dip a willow twig into some coarse salt and scrape their teeth with it. After brushing for some time, they would then gargle water in their mouths to rinse. When the dirty-looking Ren Xiaosu and Yan Luyuan saw that the people in the band had also become like them, they felt a little happy on the inside. The cap-wearing girl with perfect firearms proficiency was also walking behind the off-road vehicle with holes all over her clothes. But when Ren Xiaosu examined her, he realized that although she looked pathetic just like everyone else in the band, her steps were still light and steady. From this observation alone, the cap-wearing girl was much stronger than the accompanying private troops. Of course, this was also what Ren Xiaosu had expected. After all, how could someone with perfect firearms proficiency be outshone by those private troops? The celebrity, Luo Xinyu, who was in the off-road vehicle, ordered, "Run along and report to the stronghold that we're going in. Don't let these refugees look at us like we're monkeys." When the private troops received this order, they pointed the black muzzles of their automatic rifles at the refugees. One of them said ruthlessly, "Return to your respective pigsties." When the refugees saw the private troops getting ready to take action after being annoyed, the refugees hid back into their shacks. "Another thing," Luo Xinyu said coldly, "go and find that Wang Fugue." The clamor of voices in town died away. Everyone only dared to talk in whispers within their own shacks. If they felt that chatting among the family was not enough, they could also chat with their next-door neighbors through the curtain doors. Those were not soundproof anyway. Ren Xiaosu and Yan Luyuan were leaning on the windowsill as they looked outside. They saw that the band was divided into 2 groups. One group went to process the clearance for entry into the stronghold while another headed straight for Wang Fugue's grocery store. "Bro, why are they looking for old Wang? Yan Luyuan asked. They could be looking to settle the score with him. He was the one who recommended the guide, after all. That hunter who went as their guide didn't come back with them, so who knows whether he was the one who led them into trouble and made them have to come back earlier in such a pathetic state. Ren Xiaosu gave a rough assessment of the situation. Ren Xiaosu smacked his lips sympathetically. When the guide was leaving town, he had given Ren Xiaosu a pompous look. But who could have known it would turn out to be farewell for him? Ren Xiaosu saw the group of people knocking on the door at Wang Fugue's grocery store. Wang Fugue leisurely opened it from the inside and seemed to be quite calm. Ren Xiaosu had been a little worried about Wang Fugue. However, when he saw him looking so calm, he thought that maybe there wasn't a need to worry for him. The people in the off-road vehicle got out as well. Luo Xinyu was dressed in white casual wear, or rather, it had been white at first. She stared at Wang Fugue and questioned, "What kind of guide did you recommend to us?" Wang Fugue asked, "What's the matter?" He was truly a little curious. Since that person was supposedly an experienced hunter, it was unlikely that he would make any rookie mistakes. So why were these people so angry? You dare to ask what's the matter? Luo Xinyu said coldly, before we could even get near the Jing Mountains, he had taken us in the wrong direction. We couldn't figure out our exact location even after trying for 3 days. A lot of people knew that it was possible to drive to the Jing Mountains because there was a gravel road in the canyon where there likely had been a riverbed. But for some reason, that river had dried up. Of course, ordinary cars couldn't go on this road. But it wasn't difficult at all for off-road vehicles. This showed that the guide was not even able to lead the band to that road. So, where is he now? Old Wang asked startled. He died before he could find the way. A private soldier said coldly, as a hunter from around here, he didn't even know that there was danger in the waters. When he went to wash up at the riverbank in the morning, his face got bitten to a bloody pulp by something. When we found him, he was already dead. What's more, there were so many cruel monkeys on the route that he took us by. We almost didn't make it back alive. Ren Xiaosu was taken aback. No, there was something very wrong here. He had never heard of any fish in the nearby rivers that bit people. Was it really a fish? Wang Fugue leaned against the doorframe of the grocery store and said, "Oh, so that's what happened, eh? But I probably won't have time to find you a new guide. I have to get something done for Boss Luo Lan." In reality, Boss Luo hadn't arranged any tasks for him. He was just trying to let them know that he was in the care of Boss Luo. The private troops started frowning, and even Luo Xinyu was shocked to hear that. They didn't expect the man they wanted to teach a lesson to be backed by Luo Lan. Relaxed, Wang Fugue said, "I told you a long time ago that if you're looking to get there, you have to find Ren Xiaosu. That guy who's sick in the head." A private soldier frowned deeply. That kid who fantasized about being a doctor. Wang Fugue suddenly felt a little awkward. He pointed at the window of the clinic across the way. "Perhaps, none of you expected it, but he has really become a doctor." Luo Xinyu and the private troops were surprised. Everyone looked in the direction Wang Fugue was pointing. They saw 2 dirty-looking faces leaning on the windowsill of the clinic curiously looking back at them. Honestly, Wang Fugue was also feeling a little emotional at this moment. He thought, that's right, just how did this kid suddenly end up becoming a doctor?